Hello, everyone. This is Shayne Snavely with Veterans for America First, Veterans for Trump. We're here talking to Marcell Strbich, a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force. As I always say, I'm just in awe to even be able the ability to interview these guys and actually endorse them for the group. Uh, his pedigree of the things he's done in the Air Force is just phenomenal. Intelligence officer, a lot of different things, run a lot of organizations for the military. And I want him to tell a little bit about his story. He's running for Secretary of State in Ohio. And this is one of my big things that everyone knows about me. I've been involved with election integrity for since 2020 and heavily since 2021. I've been all over the country with that. Most of you guys know that. And one of his main platforms is to revamp the election system, election integrity, and look at smart ballots and trying to eliminate the machines and things like that, and actually really securing elections. I was involved and supported Mark Fincham for Secretary of State when he ran, and one of the big things with him is he was going to do the same thing that Marcell's going to do, and that's why I'm very intrigued about his campaign. One of the bigger things that he's looking to do is actually revamp this system and make people accountable and really get everything locked down. And so, as a Secretary of State, those that don't know are the ones that are in charge of that and actually have a big say in how that operates. It's different than Virginia. Virginia, we have a commissioner of elections appointed by the current governor that's elected. So we don't have a lot of say in a lot of that. But with the Secretary of State, they have a lot of power to do that. I'd like for you to just tell everybody your platform, Marcell, and everything you're looking to do, and really elaborate on that because that's a big deal. And I think for our community, the veterans and first responders and average conservative voters, we this is what we need. This is what we've been waiting on. And if someone like you could get in office in any state and actually implement this stuff, I think it would spread nationwide.
Thank you. I appreciate the Veterans for America First taking me on and allowing me to introduce myself. I'm Marcell Strbich. I did serve 20 years post 9/11 in a variety of tactical, operational, strategic assignments, peacetime and war. And I had the fortune to work all the way at the top of the Pentagon with the vice chairman and involving acquisition and information system upgrades, which, if you think about it, the election systems haven't been upgraded in what, 20 years? Systems that still have 2005 security controls. There's a reason why 6 out of 10 Americans, even going into the 24 election, weren't necessarily going to trust the outcome on the basis of just being told so. So we have a bit of an existential crisis in this country. We've evolved to make so many accommodations for vote casting, vote counting, but we really haven't addressed some key areas. And that's what I'm coming into this race to do in Ohio. And May 5th is our election. I want to address verifiability and security. I want to prioritize those two first. I'm calling for a one-day, one-vote system, which ensures election day in person. I'd like to see valid excuse mail-in voting that only results in justified reasons to do so, which could be being out of the precinct. So those are key parts of my platform. When I talk about paper ballots, I'm talking about pre-printed hand-marked paper ballots with watermarks. Those are anti-tamper proof evident, which you mentioned. Mark Fincham had a good design or intent there. And they only cost about 25 cents per. It depends on, opening that up. So Ohio has been a key part or bellwether in the state to do that. And we have an election season here. We have 28 days of early in-person voting. People can vote in Ohio, no excuse. They don't even require a copy of a photo ID when you vote by mail. So if you're a third-party voter registration group, all you got to do is convince any of these canvassers to register, re-register people falsely or in some form or fashion unauthorized, and you can secure for yourself a mail-in ballot off of stolen identifier information like Social Security or driver's license. It's a real thing. And in fact, it happened last year in Ohio, and I was at the forefront of it. I got involved in this because I saw the effects of what happened in our country after 2020, just like you, Shayne. A lot of us realize that if we don't have elections, we lose our voice, and we no longer have a constitutional republic to fall back on. So what I did is I got involved legislatively. I wrote 3 bills. One to enhance the verifiability of all applicants. Fortunately, federal law screwed things up with the motor voter law. What they did is they allowed for applications to be processed after the fact when people already were on the voter rolls. We need a system, and I intend to introduce in Ohio, where you have to qualify people upfront for eligibility. And that involves giving the Board of Elections identity, residency, and citizenship information. And once they have that, we'll have a system that will ensure that only eligible people get ballots.
That's wonderful, and that's what we need. And I think if you accomplish even half of that, then it'll just revolutionize and start a trend that people can't deny because they can then see how it actually works versus the left's talking points about, we just want to hinder voters. I mean, that's just ludicrous that you don't have to have an ID. And interestingly enough, in Virginia with our new Democrat, far left agenda of what they're trying to do, they actually have a bill put in to make it illegal or eliminate the ability to hand count ballots. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I'd like to know, what is wrong with local sovereignty? In a state like Ohio, we're ruby red, right? We have a supermajority veto-proof legislature. There were two rural counties last year that wanted the opportunity to hand count, and they were willing to take a ballot initiative forward, which is not restricted or prohibited in law. So they proceeded to get the necessary amount of petitions. They submitted the form to the Ohio Secretary of State, and the Ohio Secretary of State outright denied their ability to proceed with the citizen-led ballot initiative. In Ohio, you just need 50 plus 1% vote to pass a ballot initiative. And the argument they made is that the law doesn't say they could do it, which I don't know about you, but the 10th Amendment says what the federal government does not prescribe upon itself, the states can decide. So there really wasn't a basis for them to do that constitutionally. So they took it a step further and they punished any and all of those participants who participated in the citizen-led initiative to get hand counting. And they basically said they're not allowed to be voting location managers or supervisors. They punished them, essentially to kick them out of the election system because they wanted to do things in a way that was more sovereign.
Mm.
And so that drew our gubernatorial candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, to that county along with myself. And we made so much of a hay about it, it ended up in the Wall Street Journal. And of course, all hell broke loose with the Secretary of State sending them a notice saying you have to not discriminate. That's a First Amendment violation. But folks, this is happening in a red state like Ohio. So what do you think is going to happen in a Virginia or let alone some of these other states, right? So this is why you need a strong conservative, America First, oriented Secretary of State who understands the implications of those laws and rules. And that's what I've been focused on for the last 3 years in Ohio.
Wonderful. And that's exactly what we need. You have a primary opponent. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know you're ahead in the polls. What's your outlook on that? What kind of people do you have endorsing you or supporting you so far? And what do you need from the veterans and everyday voters in Ohio? What do you need to be able to excel and exceed and be on the ballot and actually win this election?
Thank you for the question. We have over 600,000 veterans. We're one of the most numerous veterans in all states in Ohio. So we definitely need our veterans to help. We don't have enough veterans in government. A lot of us bring selfless ethos, warrior ethos into office. This isn't about, for me, a political career. I don't need this job. I've got my retirement. I got three young children, 2, 6, and 8. This is about saving our country and our state. And if we didn't get a wake-up call in the last 5 years, I don't know what is going to give us a wake-up call, Shayne. So that's what that drew me off the sideline, seeing that the person, for example, that I'm running against, he didn't even want to be the Secretary of State. He declared for governor this cycle in January of last year. And we do this musical chairs thing in Ohio where these executive level office holders were irrespective of their qualifications. They just rotate chairs among each other because they think they're entitled to it. And so with Vivek Ramaswamy coming in and getting a President Trump endorsement, he screwed up the entire cycle of their rotations. And rather than run against him, my opponent decided to declare at that point for Secretary of State. So you would think he'd start actually learning about the job, which he never cared to learn about, but he didn't. He spent the next 10 months auditioning to get appointed as the lieutenant governor because in Ohio, the governor appoints the lieutenant governor. So he went around and followed him like a puppy dog to try to get that, and it didn't work out. So now he has to try to take my talking points, which he's doing every day, the things that I've learned, done, and executed on for 3 years, and he's trying to sound a lot like me. But the people of Ohio are not confused. They know he's a go along to get along Republican. He's a career recycled politician, establishment handpick. And this is a cycle where people just don't want that. You get me? I mean, they do not want the same kind of run of the mill folk. They want somebody that's going to come in, tell it the way it is, like you and I are having this interview. They're tired of that. And they understand that I'm a person who actually put my own sweat and money into this race because I want this job. so that I could secure the elections and get at this fraud, this Minnesota style fraud, which is present just as much, if not more, here in Ohio as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point and something that really needs to be discussed. And in Virginia, everybody knows we got the Republican Party got slaughtered, lost the governor's race by over 15 points, which is one of the worst in history. And one of my big pushes is where we have no chairman now. The party's broke, it's fractured, and one of my big pushes, sort of going against the fray of what you call the establishment, not just Democrats but Republicans alike, is that we need to revamp our Republican Party from the ground up, because if we continue to lose, I mean, we just gave the whole state to the Democrats, and we lost 13 House seats, state House seats. And that's devastating, to where we might not be able to recover for 10 years, possibly never, if we don't get our act together. We got midterms coming up. We're here in Virginia. We're a month into the month into the 26th cycle. We don't even have a chairman, and that's even in almost turning into a clown show. And what I like to do is, when I talk to you people around the state when we're doing this, is give us your take on the Republican Party in Ohio, the strengths that they have, and what's going on there that gives you the ability to win, and tell us something that maybe could help us at the same time.
Sure. What I tell you is that the dynamic in Ohio is probably not that much different than Virginia, but we've just had certain favorable redistricting for some period of time, and there's just probably more diehard Republicans here that they get complacent. And that's the way I would describe the Republican Party. When they run their statewide candidates, they go to a handful of donors and they just go to their, enclosed ecosystem of consultants, and they run the same message every time. Don't vote for the Democrats; they're evil. We're less evil, or we're better than them. That doesn't work anymore. That's old style. You have to tell people what you're going to do for them, what you're going to do to get at these problems. We have a property tax revolt taking place in Ohio, but very few elected office holders have come out in support of that. I've been in support of it because I think we're overspending. We went up $30 billion in budget in the last few years to over $100 billion budget. What are we getting for that in terms of services and quality? Not much. And so people here are being priced out of their homes, which means that they're going to be susceptible to not even wanting to come out and vote. This is what I tell the Republican Party. You got to start engaging with voters. That's why I've started building a statewide field army of grassroots teams in every county. I've got over 40 county leads. We have 88 counties in Ohio. And those people are excited. And those people are the ones that are going to go out and tell their friends and say, hey, so I would be a net plus to get onto the ticket for the Republican Party in the general election, because otherwise people on the Republican side are concluding, what's the point of going out? My costs are still pretty high. We're ramming all of these data centers inside of Ohio. We got 190 of them. They're leading to increased costs in terms of electricity. We haven't quite increased our energy throughput baseload to account for the growth of data centers that big tech is putting into our state. We still have that as an issue. So there's a lot of headwinds. And what we're seeing is not enough candidates like me can break through the structural advantage, but I'm somehow managing to do it because I'm very truthful and I'm very forceful in my message. And anybody who listens to me for the first 30 seconds or a minute knows that I'm ready to go to do the job, that I'm serious about it. And I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that this was a calling for me. And that resonates. And that authenticity is the type of thing that Republicans need to be bringing candidates in. Stop with the sloganeering. People don't care about that anymore. The Jeb Bush low energy style Republican is gone. And if you don't have an America First policy agenda that's universal in appeal, you probably aren't going to be winning in the post-Trump era.
I'll tell you what, Marcell, it almost, and we didn't even talk about this, but the part of the we didn't talk about any of this before we started doing this interview. And it sounds like you actually looked and read the entire playbook of the Republican Party of Virginia. I've been screaming it. I was screaming it 5 months before the elections in November, that we had to stop this culture war stuff. We had to stop, I mean, yes, it's important to conservatives, but like abortion, we're going to ban abortion. Well, my polling says that 13% of people actually care and want full-on abortion. 30% want some legitimacy of some availability of abortion, but a lot of restrictions. And our party ran, our governor candidate ran on anti-abortion, pro-life, girls and boys sports and locker rooms, And exactly what you said, the Democrats are
Right.
evil and liars. And that doesn't fly. That flies to your base. And what I've screened as a political consultant, working for senators and being around this country, in a congressional race, and in Florida in Trump's district, people are tired of that. All you're doing is screaming to the base that you usually already have. They're not going to not vote for you because you sort of rode the line because you're trying to actually attract independents and soft Democrats, which, by the way, is what most tight races need to win. And it amazes me that our party, not just in Virginia or even in your state, but across the country, the Republican Party keeps doing this culture war thing. And in Virginia, all they had to do is say affordability and we're going to make your pocketbooks better. And that's what they did. They didn't have to do anything. They just show up and say that because we destroyed ourselves. And that's something we have to stop. And that's something that you're going to change with this election. I'm positive of it. And you get in there, it's just going to explode. But I think you're going to be popular. I think you'll be all over the national news. And I think the things that you're going to implement are going to be phenomenal and they're
Oh,
going to
thank
be
you.
nationally newsworthy.
Well, we hope so. And I think we have the right people in the White House. And so if we don't take advantage of this in the next 2 years, we're never going to have another opportunity. I tell people all the time, what are your elections going to look like in 5 to 10 years? I'll tell you what they're going to look like. They're going to look like whatever California comes up with. Cell phones, swipe left, swipe right for this candidate. Companies are already ready to give us remote voting options for vote casting. Once your vote is recorded inside a software, there's really no true understanding of independent verifiability for that. And that's really where things are going to go. And if you think about the election workers today, they're getting older. And many of them are not inclined to work 12 hours a day at 80 years old. And so those are the ones that have stepped up for years and held down the fort. Are they going to do that for another year, another 5 years, another 10 years? Where are the young people going to come? If
Mhm.
we don't start creating an incentive structure, if we don't start instilling the idea that publicly held elections through exercises in our schools or through other outreach, then we're in trouble. I just want to mention this. A couple people that have endorsed me because you asked me a few questions ago and it just hit me. So I did get endorsed by General Michael Flynn, President Trump's National Security Council advisor, and Cleta Mitchell. Anybody who knows Cleta Mitchell knows she's been a foremost integrity on elections expert in this country and done more to try to address voter rolls and weaknesses in our elections for the past 30 years. She was President Trump's general counsel in Fulton County. And thanks to her, she gave me an opportunity and a voice. And I was at the White House last year in April, and I had the opportunity to meet with the National Security Advisor and go over how implementation of President Trump's Executive Order 14028 would work. And that is an important executive order preserving and protecting the integrity of our elections. The president understands what the issue is. You see this controversy going on right now is really being turned into a narrative on the SAVE Act. The idea here that this is a power grab. First and foremost, if we don't recognize that elections have long since been federalized through the Civil Rights Act, through the National Voter Registration Act, through the Help America Vote Act, through the Uniformed Overseas Act. I mean, folks, the federal government's been involved in our elections for 50, 60 years. At this point, all the states do is administer that. So we've got to combat even that narrative. But the argument I make in Ohio is Republicans, you have the power. You don't need Congress, unlike most states. You don't need Congress to come in here and require a copy of photo ID for mail in ballots. You don't need Congress to give the Board of Elections here access to identity, residency, and citizenship and require them to qualify people before you assign them a voter ID. We don't need that. What we have here in Ohio are excuses. We have excuses. We have legislators at this point that need to be led by a governor that wants to do this and by a secretary of state that insists on behalf of the people to get this done.
I'll tell you what, every time you give a reaction or comment here, it's like you're psychic. Guess what? A bill that's been put forth by the Democrats that they'll push all the way to the governor's office. Online election, online voting. Can you believe it? Online voting. And
Yeah, listen, can I say this? Yeah, I want to say this. The Democrats have one playbook. It comes from Washington. Any one of their secretaries of states is following the same playbook. The Republicans, on the other hand, are playing like they're singletons. They don't have some national strategy. They don't have some national law firm that's feeding them this. And so over time, the Democrats pick this stuff off. They use weak, empty suit Republicans that don't want to be accused of or offend somebody to keep pushing their voter accessibility, voter convenience narrative. And there's a place for that, but not all the time. So In our state, they want to get to a point where they actually pass a constitutional ballot amendment. And in this amendment, it says that the legislature can no longer legislate election legislation in the future. It goes so far as to say that if it's more restrictive than the amendment. So here's what's going to go in the amendment. And they can get this in Ohio's constitution with 50 plus 1% of the vote once they secure the necessary level of signatures. They don't even need the legislature, just go over the top of it. They basically don't have a photo ID or voter ID requirement anymore. That aspect is optional. They allow for automatic voter registration, unlimited drop boxes, same day voter registration, which is a model that doesn't allow Board of Elections to have any time to qualify anybody's eligibility on the same day of election. And then they want to go even further. They want to introduce digital mobile ID so that whatever you're passing in a polling location can be on your mobile device. So you no longer have to present that photo ID. And there's more in there. So if you want to talk about what their idea or design for elections is to completely nuke it. It's to completely nuke every single safeguard so that the level of trust, the level of complication. Oh, there's one other thing. They want you to be able to have a civil right to sue, of course, for their lawyers. So their lawyers can have so many lawsuits that clog up our court systems, and anybody can accuse anybody of somehow disenfranchising their vote. So if you want to talk about total chaos, that's what the Democrats are about. This is not the Democrat Party that I grew up around 30 years ago. Okay, that had some reasonability to it and wasn't trying to do this. So this is what we're up against in Ohio. This is what we're up against the country. I wish it wasn't that way, but it's going to take people who have a backbone to step into the breach and to take these issues on.
Well, my last statement here is if anybody wants to know the voters around this country, and especially in Ohio, you want to know what's going to happen, all you have to do, the Democrats control, and they're the far, far left radical Democrats in Virginia. I know them all. I've worked in the Senate. I know the majority leader. I mean, I'm still friends with these. As people, they're not terrible, but as politicians, they're evil and just cray cray. And if anybody wants to see how things are going to go, if we don't get people like you elected, watch Virginia this year because they're pushing every single thing they want through. It's crazy the gun bills they're putting through. They ran on affordability, and then as soon as she got in office, now they got 50 plus taxes. And the interesting thing about that is the taxes are going to affect her voters the most. Northern Virginia, the highest income, and they're the ones that voted for her. And it's just amazing. So I just say, everybody, if we don't get Marcell elected, he could be the spearhead of this because this is something that it's the only one I know that has a good chance of being elected. And I believe you will when the people start really seeing what you're talking about. If you're the person that can change the direction of this whole thing in the country, if people start listening.
Secretary of State positions are critical. This is not a sleepy position like it used to be 10, 15 years ago. All you have to do is watch the way the Democrats, one by one, used big money, dark money to get their certain candidates in office. Again, they're just strategically looking out 5, 10, 15 years with their law firms, and they realize they move the dial in whatever state they get power in. If they can move it a little bit in Ohio now, they're looking 2, 3 cycles, how they can use that to now build off of that. The whole point, though, is the trajectory is to loosen our safeguards. It's to make us reach a point where we can't trust our system. And it's to accommodate power. They want power, and that's the only thing that's driving their motivation. Republicans want power too, but they want it from an individual standpoint. They just want the title. They want the privilege that comes with the title. Maybe they want the stock advantages. So who do you think is going to win in the long run, 10, 15, 30 years, if that's the two forces that are colliding? You know who's going to win. The better organized force that uses the power of grievance and victimhood and turns the country against those with something and makes them believe that they're to blame for any of the issues that the Democrats' policies have caused that destroyed the country.
Well, that's wonderful that we're going to be able to change this with your election. And one of the other things that I'm super excited about is my ability to be able to do this and even talk to all of you, endorse you, which you have the endorsement of Veterans for America First. Is that we're
Thank you,
creating
guys. Thank you.
we're creating a community. We're creating, this isn't just about your election. These endorsements and these talks and interviews that we're having We're creating bonds across this country that you get elected, then we have all the other people that we can push, and we're building a community where we can stand up and rally to the point that we can actually challenge bad politicians, demand that their primary and taken out of office. That's another big thing about. I don't know how you feel about it. Everybody talks about for years. We need term limits, term limits, term limits. Well, guess what? Washington's not going to eliminate their jobs. That's likely never going to happen. But my argument has always been we have term limits. The term limits in the ballot box. If people get informed and they start voting for people like you to put them in office, that's the power. We have the term limits. We just don't exercise it.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree at all on any of the points. I mean, you gotta understand, we haven't awakened enough people because I honestly believe Dan Bongino said this. It hasn't got bad enough for a lot of people yet, to the point where it's food and basic needs. And so a lot of people feel comfortable. The president won. They felt like, wow, we fought for 5 years to get some semblance of sanity and liberty back across a number of areas in our society, in our lives, and now they feel this reprieve. And I just think there's just a fundamental difference between somebody who wants to live kind of a traditional conservative lifestyle. You want to enjoy your family, you want to enjoy life. You know you're here for a limited time. You want to be right with your creator. And then there's this other side that's empty, always searching for something that they're fighting for. They're never happy. They're constantly seeking the power and conniving to get that. And so our side just has to realize you can't take a break. The other side's always got their boot on a neck. They're always pushing down on the accelerator. Sometimes they don't even know what direction they're going. That's our only saving grace in a sense, is they become so radicalized with it that it's so offsetting to normal people. They're like, "Oh, this is way too much," right? That's what's doing them in. But eventually they might change their tactics and they might make it sound like they are. And that's the type of Democrat that I'm going to run up against, who's going to feel like that's the type of person they are, but they're not, because they will vote with and do the agenda of the DC law firms, and drive the elections into the ground, which will then drive the state into the ground in a period of time.
Well, I think just if people listen to this interview, they get all they need to know about you, and let's get you in office. We're behind you. I'd love to be there when you take your swearing in, and let's build this thing, and let's start. We get you in there, and we start taking the policies that you're implementing and that work, and we start spreading around the country. And I'm just looking forward to seeing you
Great.
get elected.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. It's my honor again for the endorsement. Let's
Thank
let's
you.
keep in touch.
It's our honor. Thank you.